We will now take a look at author's purpose. This is the first lesson in week 2 of our bootcamp resources. We want to start with the standard here for a second. Author's purpose comes to us from our TEKS 9A, where we want to explain author's purpose and message within a text. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on. The big portion of this lesson is going to focus on the overall purpose of a text, but we do have the ability to drill this down into specific elements of the text. So we'll touch on that here in a bit. The key to this lesson is specificity. In early elementary, when we're just trying to get kids to wrap their minds around why certain things are created the way they are, we tend to hit on, maybe you've heard the term PIE, persuade, inform, entertain, but it's really these 4 things are the ones that come up most often: entertain, inform, persuade, and express. The catch is we really need students in 6th grade and moving on into secondary is to know that author's purpose requires a specific description of why the text was composed. It's not enough to just say it's composed to inform. We want to say it's composed to inform the reader about serious issues going on in another country. It was composed to persuade the reader to vote for a certain cause or a certain candidate. And so we really want to help our students understand that all these authors or creators are generating these texts from a perspective and from a certain purpose. So let's prompt thinking. To begin the lesson off, what we want to do is have students divide paper into 4 quadrants. If you want to do this on chart paper or a Jamboard or something on the screen, you absolutely can. But each of these sections will be labeled with those 4 purposes that we discussed earlier. They will be familiar with these. If you want, you can ask them, hey, what are some different purposes of text? And usually they can give you these options. And that's a great way to kind of activate their knowledge and get into it. But we want to take it a step further. So we want to discuss 4 different types of media: a scene from a sitcom or a comedy, a political debate, or something else where there is a prominent figure giving their giving information about something or expressing their opinions. We want to give them the 10 o'clock news or another informative program, and then lastly a commercial for pizza or something, another product. We want to use a think aloud process to decide where each of these would fall. Okay. One thing I like to do with this lesson in my own class was pull video clips. Obviously, we want to make sure those clips are appropriate for our students, but you can show them those and give them a little more frame of reference for what you're talking about. Now, a big question we get with this is often, what's the difference between expressing and persuading, or expressing and informing? In informing, we're strictly giving the facts. This is the situation. It is what it is. All right. With persuading, I'm very clearly presenting information to get the audience to do something. Okay. So again, like a commercial for pizza, I'm presenting it because I want you to order pizza next time you're hungry. With expressing, it's a little trickier because a lot of times expressing will lead to persuasion, but our goal here is to talk about how with expressing, we are sharing our beliefs or our feelings about something. So it's not the hard facts like we have with informing, but we're also not expecting people to do something. We are just trying to share, this is what we believe, or this is what we perceive in a situation. And so those are hairs you may need to split with your kids. But either way, with this stage, we want to take our 4 media types and quantify them into these quadrants. The next step is, now that we've kind of talked about how different types of media or different types of presentations will fall into a certain place, we want to introduce some academic vocabulary. So this chart kind of shows inform, persuade, and express. Entertain is something the kids can usually do. And a lot of times those entertainment statements are the same. So right now we just want to focus on these three. So introduce students to the vocabulary. Some of these are more like sentence stems, some of them are partial stems. But the goal is that we can take what we see on this in this vocabulary and turn it into a statement. And so I would go back to our chart that we just looked at, and for the 10 o'clock news, I would talk about how the 10 o'clock news gives details about current events and happenings in our community. Okay, the 10 o'clock news provides details about the weather for people who need to know what to wear the next day, right? So we drive down that on that informing. You can practice with those 4 examples, model with 1 or 2, and then let your kids do the others. And that's a great way to practice this. Why are we doing this? Well, ultimately, we want to start transitioning to texts. We do have a slide deck provided that is just sample text. Some are longer than others, but what we will do with students is read through those and then have students practice creating their own statements for these sentences. We do have Pear Deck embedded if you would like to do it as a whole class component, or you can have them do it individually. If you need to do paper and pencil, they can also be printed, and the kids can just write in each box for the slide what their answer is. The goal is that they get practice generating these statements, and we'll see why here in a second. Bonus, as you're working through this, you can also expand it out to specific elements of texts. Why did the author include the questions from in paragraph 9? Why did the author include the quote in paragraph 8? And you can get to those purposes because those authors include all of these details for a reason. And so some of your kids will be ready to really take it to that next step. Some will need to stay here with the overall purpose of a text. Now, why are we doing this? When we start moving into the STAR test and how they assess this standard, you will never see a question stem that just says, what is the author's purpose, and then has 4 verbs. It always drills deeper. The author is doing this to describe a situation where blah, 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 blah. The author is doing this to inform blah, blah, blah. But all of the answer choices are going to lead towards the author presenting their information and why they're doing it. And you'll notice in those answer choices, you'll obviously have a correct answer. Some of your answers may be partially correct, where it alludes to some of the material in the text, but not all of it. Some of your answer choices will be way off base. But the point is, your students need to be prepared to read those statements and not just a one-word answer. And so by creating our own purpose statements as we read, we are preparing ourselves to be able to pick the correct one out of a lineup on a multiple choice question. Or if we have a short constructed response in our new STAR item types that will be coming next year, they can generate their own statement as needed. I hope this lesson is something that you view as helpful. If you have any questions, please reach out. I would love to talk about it with you more. And thank you for viewing this material.